right, good morning, everybody. It's really good to see you. We have a beautiful day out there today, so hopefully we'll have a great service and we'll be able to come closer to God today. Looking forward to that. I do have a couple announcements today, but first I wanted to point out somebody who is not here this morning, and that is Pastor Sean. As you know, he is actually on a mission trip, so he is on another continent right now. And it was funny, I'm going to be preaching this morning, and I was up studying for my thing when I saw that he was up in the morning getting ready for his service. So our paths were able to cross there about 6 hours in advance. So I know that he's already finished speaking. Well, I hope he's finished speaking. Otherwise, he's been speaking for about 4 hours now. So I'm sure it went really well. I know he was excited about it. It was a very, very long trip to get there. But he made it. They're safe, and they're already doing God's work. So we want to just continue to be praying for him this week. Remember that. Now, as far as announcements go, our Going Deeper life groups, Brothers Carl's group will not be meeting this afternoon. Did we decide that we?
I think we
are. Okay. We will be at Sister Clarian's this evening at 5 o'clock. Our midweek refuel, so this is, we kind of shifted some things a little bit to where we no longer had the adult class during the evening, that's during the day. But we're going to do a little bit of a shift once again, and this is just going to be a temporary thing during the summer. So I wanted to talk to you briefly about that. Last year, after our vacation Bible school, at that time, Stephanie and I were not even driving a van. But after vacation Bible school, more and more kids said, I had fun, I want to keep going. So now, I think if they all came at one time, we would have about 19 kids just on our van. And we still have another van that's picking up kids as well. So it's really started to grow from that format of last year's vacation Bible school. But it is kind of hard to prepare to have a lesson and have all this stuff ready week in and week out. So during the summer, we're going to be doing things slightly different. Instead of our normal Wednesday night program, we're going to do like a miniature vacation Bible school. And our youth group, instead of having our normal class, for the first part of it, they're going to be helping with this. So we're going to take the kids around, and we'll have a lesson. We're going to have some crafts. We're going to have a snack, and we're going to have some games. Now, to do that, we could use as much help as we can. And you might say, I don't really want to teach, or else I would have already been doing it. But this is a lot easier because we're not asking you to prepare anything. We're just asking for you to come, walk kids around from one station to another station, answer questions, help them, show them where the bathroom is, whatever. Just a way to help with the experience of it all. So if you are interested in participating in this, we're going to actually be starting this new system for the summer on this Wednesday. So if you're interested in being a part of it, let me know, let Stephanie know, and we'll work it out and let you know where we need you. So keep that in mind. So that is our Wednesday night evening service. Our midday service that Pastor Sean has been doing with the adult class, that is still going on at 1 o'clock here at the church, and that is for the adult class that we no longer are going to be doing in the evening. So keep that in mind. Hopefully you're able to come out to that. If you do work and something like that and you're not able to be there, just be in prayer for it. And like I said, keep that in mind. Invite somebody out to it. Our vacation Bible school, and even though we're doing this miniature vacation Bible school on Wednesday nights, we are still going to have our regular vacation Bible school. And that theme is stellar. And there are actually these little pieces of paper out here on the podium. Take one, pass it out to a neighbor or something like that. We want to get as many of these in the hands of kids as possible. Let them know that our vacation Bible school is coming. And we need to get the set ready. We need to make this entire stage look like outer space. So hopefully we are going to be able to do that. And to do it, we need all the help we can get where we are going to be on Tuesday nights. We need you to come out, and we're going to start working on the set building. And it's actually going to start this Tuesday night. So we have some stuff that we can glue together and paint and cut out and things like that. So we're starting the process this Tuesday night. So please be able to come out and help with that. We have our family cookouts. We have several dates here in your bulletin. Make sure that you add those to your calendar. This is where we go over to Stone Lick Lake. And we just have time of fellowship and games. So it's always a good time, so make sure you remember that. And we have a serving opportunity in September. This is the Amani Children's Choir from Uganda. So what they do is this children's choir comes from Uganda, then they travel all over the country, and they sing, and they use this as a way of raising money to help back in their villages and things like that. And it's an opportunity for us as a church to where we can provide a place for them to stay. We can provide them with maybe transportation if needed, something like that. And out here on this table, there is a list where they separated the choir into groups. So there might be 3 boys and a male, or 2 girls and a female, something like that, an adult. If you have space at your home, if it's something that you want some more information on, let Pastor Sean know, and he'll get you all the information that you need. I think the dates are on here. It would be from the September 1st to the 10th. So keep that in mind, be praying about it, and see if that's something that maybe you could be a part of. We also, after this morning service, we have a quick business meeting where we're going to be talking about carpeting that back section back there and that office and that area back there. So if you can, stick around for that after this morning's meeting. And there's one more announcement that I wanted to make, and this is youth-related. We have taken the youth group several times to the Alive Festival. It's basically a Christian concert where there's about 60, 70 bands. And what we do is we camp out, and we get to hear preaching 2 or 3 times a day. We hear this worship music all day long, and we get to go to these concerts. It's a really beautiful place, and every time that we have went, somebody has walked away just changed forever. It's a really great opportunity. So what we're looking for, though, is some help financially. We're looking for help through donations, not necessarily financially, but through bringing in cases of water or some snacks, like those boxes of chips and things like that. A lot of times Stephanie and I, we ended up buying a whole bunch of stuff to provide food and things for them, and it can be a lot. So if you guys could start bringing in cases of water or boxes of chips or something like that, please do so. That would certainly help us out. And if you don't want to go shopping for that, if you could donate a little bit of money for this event, then we can go out and kind of get the food and stuff. The tickets for the kids are about $140, which is a lot to ask a kid to pay. And then on top of that, they have to eat. So we try to make sure that we have food at our camp, that they don't have to pay anything extra if they don't want to. So any of your help we can get with that, please reach out and let us know. Ushers?
Our Lord, Heavenly Father, Lord, we just thank you, Lord, for this day you've given us, Lord, this beautiful weather, Lord. Lord, we ask that you be with Pastor Sean, Lord, as he is often allowing, Lord, working with New Life Initiatives, Lord, and just use him, Lord, in a mighty way to further your kingdom, Lord, but also to encourage to be a Life Ministry people, Lord. Just ask that you be with this offering, and bring honor and glory to you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen.
kick down, a lie you won't tear down, coming after me. No shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. No wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. No shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. No wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. All of creation, all of the earth, makes straight a highway, a path for the Lord. Jesus is coming soon. Call back the sinner, wake up the saint, let every nation shout out your fame. Jesus is coming soon. Like a bride waiting for her groom, will be a church ready for you. Every heart longing for our King we sing. Even so come, Lord Jesus come. Even so come, Lord Jesus come. There will be justice, all will be new. Your name forever, faithful and true. Jesus is coming soon. Like a bride waiting for her groom, will be a church ready for you. Every heart longing for our King we sing. Even so come, Lord Jesus come. Even so come, Lord Jesus come. We wait for you. God, we wait, you're coming soon. God, we wait for you. Yes, we wait, you're coming soon. Like a bride waiting for her groom, will be a church ready for you. Every heart longing for our King we sing. Like a bride waiting for her groom, will be a church ready for you. Every heart longing for
In the darkness we were waiting, without hope, without light, till from heaven you came running. There was mercy in your eyes, to fulfill the law and prophets. To a virgin came the word, from a throne of endless glory to a cradle in the dirt. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. To reveal the kingdom coming and to reconcile the lost, to redeem the whole creation, you did not despise the cross. For even in your suffering, you saw the other side. Knowing this was our salvation, Jesus, for our sake you died. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. And the morning that you rose, all of heaven held its breath, till that stone was moved for good, for the Lamb had conquered death. And the dead rose from their tombs, and the angels stood in awe, for the souls of all who'd come to the Father are restored. And the Church of Christ was born. Then the Spirit lit the flame. Now the gospel truth of old shall not kneel and shall not faint. And by his blood and in his name, in his freedom I am free, for the love of Jesus Christ, who has resurrected me. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. Praise forever to the King of Kings. Praise forever to the King of Kings.
Thank you, Claybird.
All right, good morning again. You know, I gotta say, this is the first time that I've spoke where I didn't have like a big podium in front of me. In fact, that's not true, actually. There was one other time that I did it, and it was one of the first times that I spoke in front of a crowd anyway. It was on a youth mission trip down in Kentucky. And we had this game back then that, well, it was called Murder, if I'm being honest. And in this game, you pass out cards to everybody, and if they have a queen, they're the murderer. And what they do is they look at you and they wink, and you die, and the object is to try to figure out who's going around killing everybody. Well, we've been playing this game all weekend long, and I'm up there preaching in front of a bunch of people that I've never seen in my life before. And as I'm up there, there's like 10, 15 youth on this side, there's like 10 youth on this side, and every single one of them were winking at me the entire time I was speaking. And all they wanted me to do was say, I'm dead, and I wouldn't give them that satisfaction, but I know not one of them heard one single thing I said that entire time, because it was just a constant wink fest the entire time. But so typically I have something to kind of block me and feel a little bit more comfortable, but we're going to roll with it today. And I also, unfortunately, I do not have a PowerPoint for you. That has just been the way that my week has gone. I did attempt to do that, but my computer was not working, and I finally got the PowerPoint to pull up about 8 o'clock this morning, and I started on it, and it just wasn't going to happen. So we're going to have to do this the old-fashioned way. They did not have PowerPoints in the Bible, so I think that we can figure it out and go from there. But let's actually start in a word of prayer. Dad, you mind opening us in prayer? If I could have everyone turn to Ruth. So Ruth is in the Old Testament, and we've actually started going over Ruth in Sunday school in the youth group. And when we finished the book of Judges, which for me was always one of my favorites growing up, of all of these great stories of strength and battles and all of this stuff. And when I was a kid, Ruth was just this kind of lovey-dovey love story that who really cares about, right? I didn't even want to do it in the youth group. And they said, well, what's next? I said, well, Ruth's the next book. But we could do 1st and 2nd Samuel. We could talk about King David and Goliath, all that fun stuff. I said we could go to the New Testament and do Acts and kind of learn how the church started. But they voted on Ruth. And I am so grateful that they did. Because after looking back at Ruth, as I'm much older and really kind of diving in and studying, it is amazing at how relatable it is to today. It's amazing at how encouraging it is. And it is a love story, but it's more than a love story between Ruth and Boaz from chapters 2 through 4, but it's a love story between God and his people. It's a love story between Ruth and Naomi. It's a way of showing this beautiful illustration of how two people fought for redemption, fought for repentance, gave their lives back to God and started following him and the blessings that came from it. So we're going to start in Ruth chapter 1, and we're only going to start with the first 2 verses for now. It says, during the time of the judges, there was a famine in the land. A man left Bethlehem in Judah and with his wife and 2 sons to stay in a territory of Moab for a while. The man's name was Elimelech, and his wife's was Naomi. The names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem in Judah. They entered the fields of Moab and settled there. I have messed up saying Ephrathites like 1,000 times, so bear with me on some of these words. But so at the very first verse, we actually learn a whole lot. And as a kid, when I would read over this, it didn't mean a whole lot to me. Like, oh, Book of Judges, okay, so this took place around the book that we just finished. Who really cares? There's a famine. Yeah, it seems like there's always famines. What's the big deal? Let's move on. But it actually tells us an incredible amount. So first, when we think of during the time of the judges, this would have been a really dark history, a portion of the history of the Israelites. This was a time when they had no king. They had no real leadership. There was no Moses or Aaron or Joshua. This was a time when it was almost kind of like the Wild West, where everything was just kind of do whatever you want and see who's going to stop you. And what they would often do is they would turn their backs on God, and then a neighboring nation would take them over, or a famine would happen, or something would happen. And then God would call up a judge, this deliverer, this person who would come in, save them from that circumstance. They would all turn their lives to God, only to repeat the cycle over again. And the entire book of Judges is just this one thing after another of the Israelites, they turned to God, and then they turned away from God, and they were punished. And then they turned to God and away from God. And there's one verse that kind of keeps recycling throughout that book of Judges that I think, again, we look at it as, well, this was such a long time ago, but let's look at Judges chapter 1, verse 25. If you're in Ruth, it's just the very next page previous to this. And see if this sounds somewhat familiar to you. In those days, there was no king in Israel. Everyone did whatever seemed right to him in his own eyes. Everyone did what they thought was right in whose eyes? In their own eyes, right? They didn't base it on what was right in God's eyes. They didn't base it on what was right in their parents' eyes or their spouses' wives. Everyone did what they thought was right in their own eyes. I cannot think of a verse that is more relatable to the current situation, not only in our country, but in our world in general, of people doing what they think is right in their eyes. See, what this is saying is there's no universal right and universal wrong. There's Joyce has a right and a wrong. Brother Bill has a right and a wrong. Stephanie has a right and a wrong. And their right and wrongs might differ and they might be different, but we just have to accept all rights and wrongs, and it doesn't matter what it is. That was the nation, or the time frame of the judges. And it says that there was no king. Now, we find out later in 1 and 2 Samuel where the Israelites wanted a king, and God said, I am your king. Right? So this is not only saying that there was no physical king, this is saying that they didn't recognize God as king. So in this verse, it basically says, in those days, they did not worship God, and everyone did what was right in their own eyes. Again, so relatable to our current culture, and it tells us a lot about the time that this is going on. To finish that verse, then it says, and there was a famine in the land. So a famine would have been a time where they have a lack of food, they have a lack of water, things are not going well, livestock is dying off. Everything that they were promised when they left Egypt in the book of Exodus, where God said, I'm going to send you to this promised land that's flowing with milk and honey, and you will have anything that you want to be able to survive. Now they're in a famine. So does that mean that God has lied to them? Well, let's find out. Let's turn to Deuteronomy chapter 11. I want to read verses 13 through 15. It says, if you carefully obey my commands I am giving you today, to love the Lord your God and worship him with all your heart and all your soul, I will provide rain for your land in the proper time, the autumn and the spring rains, and you will harvest your grain, new wine, and fresh oil. I will provide grass in your fields for your livestock. You will eat and be satisfied. So God right here is saying, if you obey me, I will give you everything that you need. Now, we all know in life we don't always get what we want, right? But God is saying, not only will you be full and satisfied, your livestock will be full and satisfied. He will give you rains at the exact right time. He will give you everything that you need to live this successful life. Well, that was tough to say. So that same promise goes to us. He is going to give us everything that we need to live that successful life. If what, though? If we obey him, right? If we put him above everything else, it says that we need to love him with all of our heart, with all of our soul. Well, let's keep reading here in Deuteronomy and find out what if we don't do that. Verses 16 and 17 says, be careful that you are not enticed to turn aside, serve and bow and worship to other gods. The Lord's anger will burn against you. He will shut the sky and there will be no rain. The land will not yield its produce, and you will perish quickly from the good land the Lord has given you. If you obey me, I will give you absolutely everything that you need. If you disobey me, I will let those other gods take care of you, and we will see what happens. See, it doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to put his hand on you, his hand of protection on you, or provisions on you, but he's going to remove that. Pastor Joe Veal talked about that a lot after 9/11. He said that it wasn't necessarily God putting his hand of punishment on the United States, but maybe he was removing his hand of protection off of the United States, right? And that's kind of how this is, and he's saying, if you want to go serve those gods, go serve those gods. Let them take care of you. And I'm just going to pull back the things that I'm giving you. So when we look at that in our lives today, and we ask, why is this happening? Why is this happening? I don't understand what's going on. Everything keeps just falling apart on me. Well, are we obeying God? Are we giving God everything that he has asked us for, which is our loyalty, our devotion, our love? Are we giving him those things? And if we're not, then who are we to complain that we're not getting all of the stuff that we want out of life? Let's go back to Ruth. So we also meet 4 people: Elimelech, Naomi, and their 2 sons, Mahlon and Chilion. Now, it's interesting. A lot of times people like to know, well, what do their names mean? Because they're different from our names. So Elimelech, his name actually means, my God is king. So you would have been given a name when you were born based on maybe how your family wanted you to grow up, or maybe there was a circumstance or a situation was going on. But his name actually meant, my God is king, and that tells me that he knew right from wrong. He knew and was raised in a family that worshiped God. Naomi, her name means pleasant. So she was a very pleasant person, somebody that you would like to be around, somebody who was probably joyful and happy all the time. It must have been so even as a baby when she was given that name. Now, both of those names are kind of important with the rest of the story. The kids' names are not quite as important, but they're still somewhat interesting. Mahlon and Chilion. Mahlon's name actually means sick or unhealthy. I am so thankful that my parents did not name me Sickly. That would be a little embarrassing going to school, but that was his name, and maybe he had some health issues as a child. And Chilion, his name means pining or withering away. 2 really kind of unfortunate names, and you got to imagine they did not have a very good time at the playground back in those days, but those were the names that they were given. Let's go on to verse 3. Oh, wait, before we do, I'm sorry. There's a couple other things that we need to talk about right here before we do move on that will help set the story for the rest of it. And I know I'm really diving deep into these 2 verses, but it kind of sets the stage for the rest of the story here. It says that they were in Bethlehem, which is in the heart of the Promised Land, but they're going to, your version might say sojourn, which means it's a temporary trip. They're just going to go to kind of figure things out, try to make a little bit of money or something like that, and then travel back. But they're going to the land of Moab. And if you've read the Old Testament at all, you know that this is a people group that pop up quite a bit. And they're often at war with the Israelites. Not a good people. This people group would have been one that would have often used child sacrifice as a way to worship their gods, and prostitution in the temples and things like that as a way of serving their many, many gods. And Moab, that name actually, or the Moabites come from Moab, and that name means father or son of my father. And I think, well, who's the son of my father? Well, no, I am, and my brother is the son of my father. But that's actually not what it's talking about here. This goes back to Lot and his 2 daughters. And his daughters actually got him drunk and then had children with their father. So this comes from this incestuous relationship, this sinful act from Lot and his daughters, where that history keeps feeding its way through the Moabites. So they are walking away from this famine who has taken over the Israelites, where God is at in Israel, and they're saying, I'm going to leave God because things are hard, and I'm going to go to the world. I'm going to leave God who has given us everything that we have ever needed, but I'm going to go to the Moabites, to the enemies, because maybe it'll be a little bit easier there. And oftentimes in our life, we go to what's easiest because life is hard. We've all been there, right? Life is very difficult at times, and sometimes it's just easier to take the easy path and to go find somewhere else. So they go and they want a new start, and they go to the land of Moab. Well, that was a decision that Elimelech and his family made, and every choice has consequences. So let's find out what the consequences are in verses 3 through 5. Naomi's husband, Elimelech, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. Her 2 sons took Moabite women as their wives. One was named Orpah, and the second was named Ruth. After they lived in Moab about 10 years, both Mahlon and Chilion also died, and Naomi was left without her 2 children and without her husband. So Elimelech makes this choice, and he pays for that. Now, it doesn't necessarily say that God, took him out because he disobeyed God, but we do know that God was not protecting him at that time, right? We know that God had removed that hand because why? He didn't obey God. Well, how about the sons? They couldn't, it wasn't their idea maybe to move there. They had to listen to their parents. So they traveled to Moab. So they're not necessarily being disobedient. But then it tells us that they found Moabite wives, which was also a rule in Israel that you were not to marry the surrounding nations, because what would happen is all of the book of Judges, where you marry the surrounding nations, you take on their gods, you forget your God. That's kind of how it worked back then. So they were disobedient, and we see that they died. So now we have 3 widows living in Moab, Naomi, a foreigner to the area, and her 2 daughters-in-law. And being a widow at this time was very difficult. They would not have been able to just get a job anywhere. That's not how the culture worked back there. Not necessarily the Israelite culture, but any culture. So really the only thing that they could do is remarry, have their children provide for them, but Naomi's children are all gone. The Orpah and Ruth never had any. So they are kind of stuck. They have to rely on the generosity of strangers at this point in time that they're in. So let's see what happens next. Let's read verses 6 and 7. It says, she and her daughters-in-law set out to return from the territory of Moab because she had heard in Moab that the Lord had paid attention to his people's need by providing them food. She left the place where she had been living, accompanied by her 2 daughters-in-law, and traveled along the road back to the land of Judah. Okay, so Naomi, she has all of these tragedies happening. Everything is kind of falling apart on her, but she hears something. Now remember, she's in the dark area of Moab, but she hears good things are happening back in Israel. Right? So before we kind of continue, I wanted to ask you guys this question. If we are following God, can the people who are in dark spaces hear that joy from us? Can they see that joy in our lives? Can they look and they say, I know that God is working in Rebecca's life? Can they do that? Can they see that in our lives? And if you're living a life where they don't necessarily see that, they don't even know if you really follow God or go to church, then you're doing it wrong. You got to work on that. You got to build that relationship, which we'll talk about a little bit later on as well. But they heard that this was going on. Now, it would be very easy for Naomi to say, oh, sure, we leave, everything falls apart for me, all of those losers, I remember how bad they were, and now they get all of these benefits. And she could have just sat there and sulked. But what does it say she did? She got up and started going back, right? See, she had journeyed away from God, and then she found out that God was back, and she turned right back to go towards God. It doesn't matter how far away we travel from God, we can always go back. And so she goes back, and she's traveling with her daughters-in-law. And as they're heading back, though, she realizes that it's going to be hard for them. See, in this culture, they would have been all foreigners. As I said before, they would have had to rely on the generosity of strangers. So it would not have been an easy transition for them. And it's not like our modern-day evangelism that you might think of today of, well, let's just try to get people to come to our church and stuff like that. These were the Israelites, the children of Israel. These were the Moabites, this evil group, these enemies. So it would have been very difficult for Orpah and Ruth to come with them. So let's see how Ruth kind of tries to talk them and coax them into going back. Let's start in verse 8. It says, Naomi said to them, each of you go back to your mother's home. May the Lord show kindness to you as you have shown to the dead and to me. May the Lord grant each of you rest in the house of a new husband. She kissed them, and they wept loudly. Let's stop there for just a second. She says that you should go back to your mother's home. What she's saying is, I'm not going to be able to provide for you. I'm not going to be able to protect you. I don't even know if I'm going to make it through this journey. You need to go back where you have help, because I can't provide that for you. Right? And we see the relationship between the two of them because they kissed, they hugged, they embraced, and they wept loudly. They loved Naomi. They wanted to be there with her. And Naomi, she's trying, she's saying, I'm putting these blessings on you. I want the Lord to bless you because you have treated me kindly. You treated my sons kindly. You have been through a lot. You don't deserve any more pain, any more hardships. Just stay. Don't worry about me. Just stay. Verse 10, they said to her, we insist on returning with you to your people. But Naomi replied, return home, my daughters. Why do you want to go with me? Am I able to have any more sons who could become your husbands? Return home, my daughters. Go on, for I am too old to find another husband. Even if I thought there was still hope for me to have a husband tonight and to bear sons, would you be willing to wait for them to grow up? Would you restrain yourselves from remarrying? No, my daughters. My life is much too bitter for you to share, because the Lord's hand has turned against me. So just to kind of fill you in on what this is talking about, the Israelite laws, the Levitical laws, was about helping widows. See, as I mentioned before, it was really difficult for them at that time of what they were being able to do if they didn't have sons or a husband. So the law would be set up to where if your husband died and you had no sons, that your husband's brother would take care of you, would provide for you, would help you out. And what Naomi's saying is, I'm too old to give you any more brothers. There's no one left. I can't do it. And even if I could, and I had a kid, Would you wait that long for them to grow old enough to be able to provide for you? And she's really pleading with them. It's just too much. Please, take the easy path. Go back. And this next part is so crucial here. Verse 14, sorry. Again they wept loudly, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. Orpah kissed her mother-in-law and walked away, but Ruth clung to her. Now let's kind of take a step back real quick from this story. Kissing and clinging. What is this about? What is our relationship showing? See, when we talk to God and we say, yeah, I'm a Christian, but we barely go to church, we don't really think about him outside of these walls, that's giving him a kiss goodbye, right? That's saying, oh, yes, I love you. That's showing something, but it's not taking any action. But what's Ruth doing? She is clinging on. She is grabbing Naomi. She is holding on. She's saying, don't send me back. I love you. I want to be with you. Is that our relationship with God? Because we need to be clingers, not just kiss goodbyes, right? We need to be telling God, please, God, I want to do anything for you. Help me. Tell me how I can serve. We need to be clinging on to him with everything we have, not saying, well, I'm kind of tired. I don't really want to go to church today. I'm kind of tired. I don't really want to teach Bible school. I don't really want to do this. But God is saying, do you love me with all of your heart? Are you obeying my commandments? And are we taking that and clinging to that? I hope that we are. And if I'm being perfectly honest, I'm not always doing that. We should. I should. And sometimes if we just kind of go back to that mindset of, well, let's do what's right in my own eyes. I really don't want to keep doing this. But we got to follow God. And this is such a beautiful picture of Ruth just clinging on for everything, saying, I am not going back. Verse 15, Naomi said, look at your sister-in-law. She has gone back to her people and to her gods. Follow your sister-in-law. Another plea, please just go back. I can't help you. I love you. I want what's best for you. Just go back. They will provide for you. You will have another husband. You can forget this whole thing ever happened. I can't help you. God has punished me. I can't help you. The next part, verses 16 and 17, is some of the most beautiful dialogue in all of Scripture. It is something that is often read at weddings, as I think that it should be. It is something that illustrates true commitment, true loyalty, devotion. And it's not between a husband and a wife. It's between a daughter-in-law and a mother-in-law. But it is so poignant in the way that it explains just what is happening here. Even though her friend, her family just walked back and took the easier path, even though she did love Naomi as well and she had wept loudly, she went back, but Ruth is staying by. And her reply to Naomi, starting in verse 16, don't plead with me to abandon you or to return and not follow you. For wherever you go, I will go, and wherever you live, I will live. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Where you die, I will die, and there will be buried. May the Lord punish me, and do so severely, if anything but death separates you and me. Think about how impressive this is. Now, all Ruth knew about God prior to this whole thing with Naomi and getting to know her maybe on a more personal level is, well, the Israelites are going through a famine. So their God is obviously not doing a very good job because there's a famine going on. And these people fled their God to come here to our gods. Right? So that would paint this picture in Ruth's mind of our gods are pretty powerful. Our gods are able to provide what your gods wasn't. But through the testimony of Naomi, for seeing her and Naomi saying, all this is gone. I'm going back to my God. I am repenting of everything and I am forgetting my past and I am going back to God because he is my true Savior. He is who is going to save me. Seeing that testimony is what is causing this. And Ruth is saying, wherever you will go, I don't care where it is, I'm going to follow you. Wherever you live, I will be right there with you. I will live with you. I will provide with you. I will help you through life. Your people, the Israelites, I know that I am an enemy. I know that I'm a Moabite person, but your people will be my people. The Israelites will be my people. But the most important piece to this puzzle, your God will be my God. See, I'm going to forget about my family. I'm going to forget about my traditions, and I'm going to forget about my gods because they are not true gods. I want what you have. I want your God. Hopefully people are looking at us and they're saying, I want what you have. I want to see that God who is working in your life, and I want that same God to be working in my life. Tell me how to do that. And this is Ruth, who never had a tradition of growing up in church. And she was able to repent and turn around and say, God, I want you. And we know this is not a temporary thing, because what's the very next thing say? Where you die, I will die. I am in it for the long haul. It is not saying, hey, I know that you're a little bit older, and whenever you pass, I'll probably go ahead and head on back. It's saying, no. The very next part, I will be buried there. I am committed to you till death and beyond. I will never leave your side. Why? Because your God is my God. And then she asks for accountability. I think as Christians, a lot of times we do ask for accountability. We want people to help us. You know, hey, help me read my Bible a little bit more. Help me pray a little bit more. In fact, we were recently doing this a premarital counseling, and one of the people in it, almost every question she was saying, I want my husband to keep me accountable. I want him to make sure that I have a great prayer life and that I'm praying all the time. I want him to encourage me to do Bible studies, encourage me to read my Bible. If I say that I don't want to go to church, encourage me to go to church anyway. Push me to have a stronger relationship. And the two of them had kind of answered their questions separately, and his answers were similar. It was worded a little bit different, but it was, help me grow in my relationship with God. What's his responsibility as a husband? He would say, to help her grow in her relationship with God. That type of accountability is huge, and I think we use it quite a bit. But she's asking for accountability right here. To who? To God. She's saying, Lord, if I don't follow through on this, if I back out on this promise, punish me. And punish me severely. See, what she's saying is, Lord, I trust that you are just. I trust that you are fair. I know that you are the one true God, and I am going to follow you. And if I don't follow you, if I back out on any of this, punish me. Maybe we need to do a better job at when we pray, we say, hey, God, if I don't follow you, get me back in line. Right? If I start venturing away from you, do whatever you have to get my butt back here and serving once again. That is the type of mindset that we need to be having. So Naomi, verse 18 says, when Naomi saw that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped talking to her. She realized that she had lost, that Ruth was coming to her. Now, there are a few more verses here in chapter 1, but I think that since we're only going to get to talk about this 1 week, I want to let you guys know kind of how it turned out. So we saw Elimelech and his sons and their choices, and then we saw the consequences. We saw the Israelites and their choices to turn away from God, and the famine was that consequence. Then we saw the Israelites turn back to God, and God starts providing for them again. We see Naomi, her choice was to go back to God, and God allows her and starts blessing her, right? Well, Ruth, how does this turn out? She made a choice, a hard choice, a very difficult choice. So how does it turn out for her? Well, in the next chapter, she meets a guy by the name of Boaz, who happened to be from the same family as her husband. And Boaz was a very prominent man, a very noble character at Lysimaz, and he would have been a patriarch of this family, somebody who everyone looked up, not necessarily the oldest in the family, but somebody that everybody looked up to. And during that decision of the famine, when Elimelech said, I need to go provide for my family, and I'm going to leave God's promise, Boaz said, I need to provide for my family, and therefore I'm going to stay in God's promise. And his blessing was to be a very wealthy person who had a lot of stuff. And Ruth, while she had to rely on the generosity of strangers, found herself in his fields. And what transpires over the next 3 chapters is this love story between the two of them, and they end up getting married. And you might think, oh, well, that's kind of a cute story, but it goes even deeper than that. In fact, let's turn to Matthew chapter 1. Now, don't forget, this is a Moabite woman from a tribe who comes from this really dark time in Genesis, this really dark beginning. They did not follow God in any way whatsoever. And we know as Christians that the Old Testament is kind of leading up to the Messiah, leading up to salvation and Jesus Christ, who we have a relationship with today. So in Matthew chapter 1, we're going to read just the first 6 verses. The genealogy of Jesus Christ. So this is Jesus' family tree, and it's an account of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. So the line from Abraham, who God promised all of this stuff, through David, who he promised would be that the Messiah would come through him. Verse 2, Abraham fathered Isaac. Isaac fathered Jacob. Jacob fathered Judah and his brothers. Judah fathered Perez and Zerah by Tamar. Perez fathered Hezron. Hezron fathered Aram. Aram fathered Amminadab. Amminadab fathered Nahshon. Nahshon fathered Salmon. Salmon fathered Boaz by Rahab. Boaz fathered Obed by Ruth. Obed fathered Jesse, and Jesse fathered King David. See, Ruth goes from being this widow in a foreign land who knows nothing about the true God of Israel to being the great-grandmother of King David, to being in the line of Jesus Christ. God honored her so much. And if you notice, there was a whole lot of men's names written down here, right? But God viewed her loyalty so much that he wanted to make sure that she was forever included in this list. Her legacy was one of somebody who could have taken the easy path, but instead chose to follow God. What is your legacy? When we are long gone, will we forever be remembered as the person who loved God, who gave God everything, who turned away their family, who turned away everything that they had to, all of the negativity in their life, to make sure that the most important thing they could do is follow God? Is that our legacy? Is our legacy that we did what was right in our own eyes? And if I'm being honest with you, for me, sometimes it depends on the day. I'm just being honest. Sometimes I am falling and I struggle a little bit. It's at those times that we need to be encouraging to one another. We need to pull each other back up. We need to be praying. We need to be asking God for accountability, asking our spouses for accountability. So today, as our musicians come up, I want you to think about a few things. I want you to think about if you were Naomi, if you were Orpah, if you were Ruth, three separate women who had three different decisions. One grew up in church, grew up with God, and had strayed away, and then came back. Would you come back? Two, one who only knew just a little bit about God, but decided, if I have to take the hard path or take the easy path, I'm going to take the easy path. Or the other one who decided, I don't care what it means, I'm following you. I am all in on this. I hope that your answer is that you are all in with God and that there is nothing that's going to stop you. And they're getting ready to play after I pray, but what would be great is afterwards, if any of those decisions are weighing on you, if you're trying to figure out where you are in your life and what you need to do and how you need to maybe rededicate your life to God, just come up to this altar and pray. And there's nothing special about this altar whatsoever. You can pray in your seat. In fact, I encourage you to pray in your seat, but there is something unique about coming up to this altar. And it's that same thing that Naomi did. She took a step, right? It's easy sometimes to sit back in her seat, but she took a step forward and she said, I am going. And it doesn't matter how far, like I said, you walk away from God. You turn around and take one step towards him, and he is there. And we saw these blessings when they got back to Bethlehem. Immediately, God blessing them for their obedience. Let's pray. Thank you, Lord, for all that you have done for us, Lord. Just thank you for this message. Thank you for the words that are in here, Lord, that just are relatable to us in many different ways, Lord. I ask that you just help us to grow, help us to be closer to you, help us to lean on you, Lord. I ask that if we do stray away from you, put somebody in our lives that will bring us back. Lord, I know that there are many people here who are in a lot of different situations. And some are worse than others, and some have just maybe coming out of a bad situation. Whatever is going on, Lord, I don't know, but you do. Please give them what they need, Lord. Help them to know that you might not get what you want, Lord, but when we come to you, we will have everything we need. We will be filled. We have it all. Just help us to understand that and to make that choice to follow you in all that we do. I thank you and I love you. Amen.